I'll start with with the presentation. I have roughly 50 slides, and then we're going to go into some Q&A. I got some of the questions beforehand, but please feel free to ask questions during the webinar. I'll make sure to answer each and every one of them. So welcome to my presentation about the death of 10 blue links. This is a topic that I have been speaking about all year long, and I continue to add new material and new findings. So you'll see a lot of things that I've never spoken about before in this deck, and I'm curious to hear what you think about it. So why don't we start with a very simple Google search. So I recently bought a desk, and I was doing some research because I do like to sit and stand when I work. And of course, I was looking for a standing desk. So I punched it into Google, and you see kind of the common search results, right? Like there's some paid results at the very top. And then I also realized that there's kind of a new model that I hadn't seen before, which is called research. So Google tells me to research standing desks, literally. And what they do is they link a couple of articles here, and it's almost very comparable to the top stories that you would see for other queries. And then you have some of the organic search results. Of course, there's Amazon, there's some other providers, direct sellers, or manufacturers of standing desks. And so if you keep scrolling through this whole search results page, you see that kind of landscape. And of course, it's a good introduction to my a presentation about 10 blue links, or the death of 10 blue links, because what you see here is that most of the search results are not 10 blue links, right? There are other modules, or as I call them, SERP features, that Google shows to searchers. So you have this research module that I mentioned before. You have something like people also ask, you have images, you have more questions. And all of these I colored blue because I kind of classify them as people looking for more information, learning more. But then you also have something that targets more of a transactional intent, which are popular products and brand refinements. And then you even have a map. So there's some sort of a local intent here. And what this tells us is that Google serves a lot of different user intents when people search for something like standing desks, which makes sense because the search itself does not clearly indicate what people want, right? It's not a keyword like standing desks in Chicago or in San Francisco, or it's not something like, why should you use a standing desk, right? There's no indicator of what people exactly want. But that doesn't change the fact that the actual blue links are not very present anymore. There are some blue links on the SERPs, but they're not what attracts people's attention. So the question that I want to pose is, how often do we actually see 10 blue links anymore in search results? And that's a question that I want to answer throughout this presentation with some data and some case studies. But first, I want to take a step back and talk about this transition of Google from a search to an answer engine. So in 2018, I wrote an article about Google's transition from search to discovery engine. I should have called this article from search to answer engine. And it was based on this article from Ben Gomez, who at the time at least, and I think he still is, was the SVP of Search, News, and Assistant. And again, this is like a very interesting job combination or job title that should tell us a little bit about Google's priorities and how they kind of see things going together. But this article was called Improving Search for the Next 20 Years. And it was about Google's recent 20 years and how far they've come and what they plan to do in the next 20 years. It's basically a treasure trove of information, or basically a roadmap of what Google wants to do in a nutshell. And three themes that came out of this roadmap was the transition from queries to a queryless experience, the transition from answers to journeys, and the transition from text to visuals. These are three big objectives that Google wants to accomplish in the next 20 years. And I think they're going to be way ahead of schedule because these are all things that we're seeing already in the search results. But there was another very, very important concept that Ben Gomez outlined in this article, and that's this idea of the topic layer. So the topic layer is very interesting because it sits on top of Google's knowledge graph. You're probably familiar with Google's knowledge graph. It's the database of entities that allows Google to mathematically understand the relationship between them. An entity is something like a book or a name. It's a very simple thing or a concept. And the topic layer is the evolution of that concept. It sits on top of the knowledge graph, but as the name says, deals with topics like opinions or trends or ideas. And so it allows Google to mathematically map and understand the relationship between those entities and between topics, not only between those two, but also between each other. So it's very, very interesting. And it's one of the biggest reasons for why Google is making that big change to an answer engine, because Google has the technology now to give us better answers. However, there's a second and a third reason. So the second reason is that actually Google is under a lot of pressure. So starting 2020, Google for the first time disclosed the revenue that it makes from YouTube ads. And it disclosed that historically over the last 3 years. So what we see when we map the relative share of Google ads versus YouTube ads of the total revenue, then we see, and I highlighted this in green here, that the share of revenue from YouTube is growing larger, while the share of Google ads is growing smaller. This is super important for us to understand, because more than 82% of Google's total revenue comes from Google ads. So when you look at the absolute numbers, you'll see that the growth of revenue from Google ads is still going up, but the relative growth is going down. So in 2017, for example, in 2018, Google grew Google ads revenue by 22%. In 2019, it was only 15%. So that's a huge kind of slowdown, whereas the ad revenue from YouTube is becoming more important. And so something that we have to understand as context is that actually Google is in some sorts a victim of its own success. It's one of the, if not the most successful startup in history. It has raked in over 20% of quarterly revenue year over year. So it's growing tremendously fast. And Google was very lucky that the smartphone trend enabled it to display ads on 2 real estate pieces, right? On desktop and on mobile. And now they're looking for this next big thing that allows them to keep the growth rate up, right? And so that's where they're getting under a lot of pressure to monetize the search results even more. And then the third reason for why Google is making that change is that there is a market that they can't access, which is China. So in fact, when you look at the traffic numbers to the biggest search engines like Google, Bing, and Baidu, then you'll see that Baidu already has 10% of Google's traffic. And the problem is that this is a huge growth market, or China is a huge growth market for Google, but they can't really access it for political reasons, whereas Baidu can thrive in this market. So that's a very limiting problem for Google. And all of that, again, leads us to see this transition from a search to an answer engine. In fact, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google and now Alphabet, has last year announced at Google I/O that they're changing from a company that helps you find answers to a company that helps you getting things done. And that's so important for us, because that is the background or the reason for why this big change in the search results is happening, and why these 10 blue links are already dead. So let's look at the impact on click curves, because that's very important for us as the clicks that we get to these 10 blue links and how it's distributed across the search results pages decides how much traffic we get. And I recently asked my Twitter followers what they think if Google's #1 position matters more today versus 10 years ago. And the results are that about 30.8% said it matters, or that position #1 matters more. And then just as many people, like slightly less, 30% said it matters less. And 18% said it matters just as much. So the result of that poll is, and keep in mind, it's just barely 600 people. The result of that is that we're not sure. And that makes a lot of sense, because there is a lot of nuance. It depends, for example, on which keyword you're looking at, what industry you're looking at, and what SERP features Google displays. But fact of the matter is that it's not clear that position 1 has become more or less important, right? And that's exactly the fact that I'm alluding to. In fact, there is a study that was done by Nielsen Group, where they looked at the distribution of clicks across the SERP positions and compared 2006 with 2016. And so they saw that in these 10 years, the click curve across the search results, at least in the top 5, got flatter, right? So the fewer people are clicking on number 1 positions, and more people are clicking on number 3, 4 to 5 positions. So that's super important because it tells us that actually the position number 1 is getting fewer clicks. And of course, the reason for that are the SERP features that Google is showing. So if we're looking at a comparison of a simple Google search from 2009 to 2019, we see that there's just a lot more going on. Right? We have way more images, we have way more videos, we have questions that Google answers right away, links to social profiles, whereas in 2009, there was just 10 little links. And Nielsen Group calls that the pinball pattern. And when I say that, what I actually mean is the attention of people in the search results. Whereas I when I started in SEO 10 years ago, was taught this F-shaped model where people start at the very top and scan the content from left to right, unless they read in Hebrew or Arabic, then it's from right to left, and then go make their way further down. That's not the case anymore. Because we have so many distracting things in the search results, people's attention bounces left and right and up and down like a pinball. And that is one of the reasons for why we see that flatter curve of click distributions. In fact, I would even go so far to say that organic results get way less attention unless you have some sort of a crazy rich snippet. But the first attention usually goes to those graphical visual elements that Google shows with their SERP features. In fact, for this keyword, which is expense management, we saw that we get way fewer clicks on desktop and mobile. And pay attention to one detail here. So first of all, for this specific keyword, our average position on desktop was 2.8. On a mobile, it was, sorry, I clicked ahead a bit too quickly. At a mobile, it was about 5.4. So that is not a tremendous difference. But quickly, let's go back to the search results. We see that on desktop, we have 2 SERP features, right? Or maybe 3. We have the people also asked box at the bottom. We have a featured snippet, and then we have a knowledge card on the right. On the mobile search results, we have a very different landscape, right? We have this knowledge card at the very top. We have videos. We have a carousel of brands, and then we have more image thumbnails. So there are way more detractors on mobile. And this box at the top, just these couple of elements, lead the number of impressions on mobile to be much, much lower compared to desktop, right? So you can argue about the clicks you get on mobile and desktop, but look at the impressions. People are not even scrolling down here to our search result, even though we rank in the top 5. That's the kind of big impact on click curves here, and that's pretty devastating in some cases. Let's look at the impact on business. So this transition, this change, has led some companies to really struggle. In fact, last year, Expedia kicked out their CEO for lacking performance, and they called out several times how their SEO performance is a major driver of that. And they also called out Google's Hotel Finder platform, which we'll take a look at in just a second. And TripAdvisor, competitors of Expedia are not exempt from that. In fact, TripAdvisor is also facing aggressive competition from Google, and their stock dropped tremendously in November 2019, and analysts have called out that TripAdvisor is suffering under competition from Google. You find that in official analyst reports, which is pretty stunning. And so when we look at a couple of examples, for flight search, say a keyword like flight from SFO to Chicago, on desktop, you have 2 ads that you can bid on, but on mobile, you don't even have that. You get Google's flight search right away, right? So there's basically some sort of a commodification happening where Google squeezes the brands into small little boxes. And we find the same thing on hotel search, right? It's Google's own SERP feature, Google's own integration that is shown on top. It's not the search results or even paid results from some of the other players in that space, except for maybe like one ad on mobile, which Booking can bid on here. But other than that, it's really hard to diversify, stand out, and get traffic. And brands are suffering under that. Another example are premier sports league, like the NFL, NBA, or NHL. But when you look at the search results, Google is pretty much a sports magazine, right? It's pretty, like you get all the information here. You get videos, news, updates, game scores, everything. And of course, you get the same thing on mobile. And those sites and those leagues are suffering under the missing traffic that Google is now showing right in the search results. For users, it's great, right? If I was watching the National Hockey League and I just wanted to see the game scores, like I just look for NHL and I get the scores right there. But for businesses, it's devastating, and it's definitely a noticeable impact. So let's talk about what we can actually do about that. And one thing that I've been bullish on for a while is user intent. Basically, the intention that searchers have when they perform a search. And a while ago, I wrote this piece on my blog called User Intent Mapping on Steroids, which explained how we can use SERP features to reverse engineer the user intent. So SERP features, as I mentioned earlier, are things like local packs, image packs, featured snippets, and so on and so on. And Google wants to perfectly serve people's user intent or the searcher intent because it wants to provide the best results. So by looking at the SERP features Google displays, we can understand Google's interpretation of the user intent. And that helps us to create better content in the right format to make sure that we rank or get at least as much traffic as possible. And I've since been working on the next step in the evolution of that model, which is tracking fragmented intent. So I haven't written about this. I'm going to publish a blog article or a long article about this relatively soon. But it's not enough for us to just simply track SERP features because, as I showed you in the very beginning, the user intent in a lot of cases is fragmented. You look for something like standing desk, and it's not clear if you want to learn more about it, if you want to buy one, or if you're looking for a store where you can get one around the corner. So what we have to do is we have to map our keywords. We have to use or export our keywords. We can use something like Serpstat for that, export the SERP features as well, and then see how many SERP features appear for a single keyword. Two examples. What is a grant has a very clear learn user intent, right? There are 4 SERP features on that SERP, and they all fall into the category of learn. A keyword like chatter, for example, has 6 different SERP features, and they mostly fall into 4 different categories. So that's where the user intent is fragmented because there are different things that users might want to do. And to take that even a step further, it's not even enough for us to take just a snapshot of how fragmented the user intent is at the moment. We have to track that over time. So in this example, I pulled that whole data set, and I think it was a couple of thousand keywords with different SERP features for February and March. And then I compared how the SERP feature, the fragmented user intent for different keywords changed over time. And when we aggregate the results, I was able that for some user intent features, the SERP features changed a lot. So learn user intent for this keyword set changed from 50 to 59% from February to March. It dropped in review user intent from 18 to 7%. So these are big changes. And if we don't keep track of those, we're losing traffic and we don't know why. So user intent to me here is the key to understanding understanding SERP features and what their impact is on our traffic. So we have to up our intelligence when it comes to that. We also have to invest more time in identifying opportunities. And one of the tools that I find very simple and sufficient here is, for example, Google Search Console. So to identify opportunities, what I mean here is you would want to look for keywords that get a high click-through rate, but might not rank on number one. So what you can do here is first you go to Search Console Performance Report. You then narrow the time range down to a single full month. So as I prepared my slides this week, I took April because May isn't finished yet. Then I filtered the position to be equal to 3. You can do that with 4 or 5, like whatever search results on the first page of Google that is not 1 or 2. That's where I would personally cap it. And then I filtered out the brand keywords. So in this case, anything that is G2. Those you don't want to show because, of course, brand keywords get a much higher click-through rate. And then I sorted that data after click-through rate. And then I found this outlier where we get 40% of clicks for this keyword Cloud Academy versus Linux Academy, which is way, way higher than you see for these other search results, right? That to me is an opportunity because if I can get that keyword even higher, I will get even more traffic. And so when we look at the search results here, what's happening is that we're ranking number 3, and that Reddit is above us, and that BizJournals gets a featured snippet. So as a follow-up, I would do my best to tweak the content on our page so that we get the featured snippet and get even more clicks. And so because there is an outlier, that tells me that Google is not showing many SERP features or maybe no SERP feature at all that could detract from our clicks. And so the position 1 is more valuable, which is why I prioritize going after these opportunities instead of others where we might not get as much of a bang for our buck. And so what you can do here is to use Serpstat. I used 2 filters in this case. One is the special elements in SERP. I filtered that to not include featured snippets or knowledge graph or carousels. And then I also took out keyword misspellings. And what I have then in this case is a list of keywords that don't have SERP features that detract from my results that I can go after and still get a lot of traffic from. And as you see, some of these keywords have pretty juicy volume, right? Like, look at that. Like, benefit of a standing desk has 5,400 monthly searches. And that's a lot of traffic that I could potentially get, especially if I was a retailer or a seller of standing desks. I'd probably go for that keyword with an article and then see if I can tease some of my products in an article instead of trying to rank for this for the keyword standing desk, which might have a bit more traffic, but also shows a lot more SERP features that distract from my result. And then what you also want to do is you want to track SERP changes. One of the most notable examples that I found in my data was when Google stopped deduplicating featured snippets. This happened at the end of January. You see that Danny Sullivan confirmed this around January 22nd. And it basically means that there is no more position 0. The featured snippet is now position number 1. And if you rank in the featured snippet, you're not ranking outside of the featured snippet again in the organic results. So I used that opportunity to look at some of our featured snippets. This is a case study of 2,000 featured snippets, which I wrote about on my blog. You can go to kevin-indig.com, check that out. And what I found is that the impact of this deduplication is actually not as big. Take that with a grain of salt because that's just for our side. But I looked at the correlations on desktop and on mobile. That's very important. We're going to talk about that in the next section of advice. But I did not find a big impact. In fact, I think the net impact was below -1% click-through rate. What I did find, however, is that our featured snippets still on average get roughly 43% of clicks. So it tells me that for us, the featured snippets are still very worth going after. And so another thing that I found very helpful to track the SERP features is this storm element in Serpstat. So the storm basically tells you how much movement there is in the search results for a keyword at the moment. And so I took an example of 7 different keywords here for G2, and you see that for marketing automation software, there was quite some movement in the SERPs. But Serpstat also shows you how your snippet snippet changed over time. So one example could be that you got a featured snippet, that you got a rich snippet, or that you had a rich snippet before, but then lost it. So it seems that our snippet is still looking very much the same over that time span, but that some of our competitors' snippets might have changed, or that Google might have taken out a SERP feature. So you can use that storm in the tracking section of Serpstat to get an understanding of how the SERP changes over time. I also alluded to differentiating between mobile and desktop, and that's very important to me. So it is important because you might have noticed in some of the screenshots that I showed before that the SERP features, the SERPs are looking very different on mobile versus desktop. And when we look at something like dips in organic traffic, in this example, it becomes very apparent that we have two dips. This is like in neon green, you see the total organic traffic. And then in blue, you see the organic traffic from desktop. And in turquoise, you see the organic traffic from mobile. And so you see that the two different dips in total organic traffic were caused by different traffic sources at each time, right? At the first time it was from mobile, the second time was from desktop. But if you don't segment your traffic by devices, you will not understand where your dip is coming from. So if instead you look at the keywords that dipped, you will get a misleading interpretation of why your traffic actually tanked. So that's why I'm so bullish on separating or differentiating between desktop and mobile. And if you look at the SERPs, it makes perfect sense because they look so different. Another example is that we have very different click-through rates for our brand on desktop and mobile. We have actually, our click-through rate on desktop is 3 times higher because there's so many distracting things on the mobile search results. So make sure to keep an eye on that and always slice and dice your data after mobile and desktop. And then also, I want to urge you to play the SERP feature game, right? There is like one thing that you can do is, of course, avoid SERPs that show a lot of SERP features from Google, but you cannot always do that. So when there are SERP features, play the game, try to rank in them, try to occupy them. For example, write for people also asked boxes. And there's a neat tool that's called also asked that will show you all the different PAAs for one keyword that you punch in so that you can include those questions in your content and then hopefully rank in the PAAs. You can also use the pyramid tactic, which is very suitable for a featured snippet. So when you want to rank for featured snippets, you would start with giving the answer to the question right away at the beginning of your content, then explain the context of that answer, and then further describe the background in the hope to keep people on your site. You can also use Q&A schema to stand out in the search results, but I want to manage your expectations because I actually looked at the Google documentation for Q&A schema, and I saw that when they use this example of a query that is how do I remove a cable stuck in a USB port, and that's where they show the Q&A snippet. But when you search for that nowadays, you actually get a featured snippet, not a Q&A snippet. So I do have the suspicion that Google will show more featured snippets over time instead of Q&A snippets, but it still makes sense to try Q&A snippets and see how lucky you are. Just don't forget that the user intent is very similar. So in best case, you try to optimize for both the featured snippet and the Q&A snippet. I also want to urge you to get reviews for whatever product you have. It could be local reviews, it could be software reviews, it could be physical product reviews, very similar to how Amazon has them and how Google shows them as well, because review snippets still attract a lot of attention in the search results. Of course, there is a schema for reviews as well. And then lastly, I want to urge you to structure your content around entities. I already mentioned the intro, how entities are very important for the knowledge graph and the topic graph. So you want to make sure that you understand what entities are important for a keyword. And this is neat little tool that's called Entity Explorer that I believe draws from Google's NLP API and shows you all the relevant and related entities to your keyword. In this case, I looked for Star Wars, and then it will show you all sorts of flat hierarchy entities here that you can click on and then expand So that should be helpful for you when you create content and serve as an inspiration. You don't have to cover all the necessary entities. Instead, I urge you to go down one path and then just follow all the sub-entities that you find from that. And I also want to urge you to invest in rich media. We had a couple of examples that show how many more visual elements Google search results show. We have videos. We also have key moments in videos where Google shows you snippets in a video that might be a good answer to your question. But we also have things like podcasts that appear more and more in search results. So you can use Serpstat to filter for these visual elements and then potentially bypass the organic search results. So, like one problem is that we get fewer clicks to our organic results. But in some cases, especially when you're a young brand or a new player in the market, you want to look for these opportunities where you maybe don't need an organic search result, but instead you can rank with a little video, right? So here in this case, again, I filtered the keywords to not include misspelled keywords, but to include video thumbnails. I get a nice list of keywords with a lot of volume on Google, like a lot of potential traffic that you can get here. And then you could maybe create a video that is related to that keyword. So in this case, the keyword is desk for standing, and you see that there are a couple of videos that might get a lot of traffic. So look for these shortcuts, look for these ways to bypass organic search results besides, of course, trying to rank in them. So to recap that real quick, my recommendations here are to track fragmented user intent or just user intent in general by looking at SERP features. You also want to identify opportunities where Google does not show a lot of SERP features, and then also track the search results pages themselves because they change so much over time. You also, whenever you look at data, want to differentiate between mobile and desktop. You want to play the SERP feature game by shaping your content in the right format and to the right structure so that you appear in PAAs and featured snippets and videos and podcasts. And then lastly, you want to invest in rich media. You want to find opportunities to maybe record an article yourself or shoot a small, quick video if possible to get as much real estate in the search results pages as possible. And with that, I want to thank you very much. I know I didn't introduce myself a lot at the beginning, but I believe in diving right into and then plugging my name at the end. So again, for all those who didn't know, my name is Kevin Indig. I'm the VP of SEO and Content at G2. You find me on Twitter at Kevin_Indig. I blog a lot, and I write this weekly newsletter called TechBound, which I also just recently launched a paid tier to. So if you want even more of that information, you can pay $5 a month and you get 3 episodes a week. So thank you very much for your attention. And I want to take some time to go over your questions. So let's see what questions we have. I got a couple of yours in advance. And want to go through them. And then I'm also going to check out the chat. So here we go. One question was how to grow traffic when having impressions, but traffic is 0. That is a great question. I think I hope that I was able to answer that question, at least in part throughout my presentation, but I would go back and first of all, see what position you rank on. Are you in the top 10? Are you on first page of Google? Because those are the results that get the actual traffic. If that's the case, you want to Google that keyword. Look for yourself at what the search results actually look like, and then see if Google displays any of the SERP features that I mentioned in my presentation. If that's the case, you either want to try to find a way to appear in these search results, in these SERP features like PAA or featured snippet, or of course you want to work on getting your ranking higher up. So check for your ranking, see what SERP features Google shows, and then see if you can act accordingly. I hope that answers your question. If not, feel free to jump in the chat and refine. Another question was, is there any way to know what percentage of searches are recirculated by a click on SERP features? Like people also asked, tabs, Google search filter, pills, etc. All of these seem to be increasing over time. The answer is yes. I found some different data sources that prove that these SERP features are increasing over time. It depends, though, on the market, or better said, on the country. So this is different for, say, the US versus India, or versus Germany or the UK. And it depends on the device. So I also saw data sources that prove that some SERP features are increasing on mobile devices while they're decreasing on desktop devices, which means that Google is getting smarter about the user intent and what people actually want to see. And it also means that we have to be smart about understanding what device and what market is the most relevant to us. So you'll find a couple of case studies. I can also send them over later after the show. You can reach out to me on Twitter, for example, and I can send you some of those case studies over. Another question was I'd like ideas for B2B businesses that sell commodities such as invoicing services or translation services. That is a good call, right? It comes back to this idea, or to this notion that the degree of difficulty very much depends on the vertical that you're in. Commodities are hard to sell because you're dealing with the same product that everybody else deals with. And success that I saw is based on providing more service around these commodities. So can you provide unique content that nobody else has to stand out and attract buyers that way? So for invoicing services, one example that I'm just shooting from the hip that comes to mind at the moment is, are there questions that you can answer on your page or on your site that nobody else answers? Right? So can you maybe provide a small part of the service for free to get an edge or an advantage over some of your competitors? I'm pretty sure that for invoicing services, there's some recurring questions that come up over and over. And so I would do some market research and talk to some of your buyers or potential customers to see what those questions are. Or can you provide that content in a different format? Can you record a video answering these questions? Maybe it's animated, maybe it's a Q&A, maybe it's an interview with an expert about these questions. Or can you record a podcast that answers people's ongoing questions about these invoicing services? So that's how I would think about that. And then the last question that I got is how to build Google Trust Rank fast. I know it takes time, but I also know there's something more about just creating great content. And I agree with you. I think in SEO, we very often revert to this notion of just create great content and that's all you need. And I don't think that's true. I think that could be true in some cases, but not in all cases. When we're talking about Google Trust Rank, that is a proprietary metric. And I very much think that the question is more about how do you build high quality backlinks? Correct me if that question is wrong or if I understand that the wrong way, but building high quality backlinks fast is always tricky. It very much depends on your vertical, what industry you're in, and it depends on what resources you have. Do you have a lot of money? Can you create a lot of content, or can you not? But one thing that I like to do very much is to reverse engineer how competitors get backlinks. So I would use a tool like Serpstat to scan the backlink profile of a competitor and then see how they get their backlinks. Is it PR mentions? Is it some other content that they created? And then use something like the skyscraper technique to do it better, or to reach out to that link source, say it's an article from a publisher, and just ask hey, can you include me as well? That works surprisingly better than most people think. And don't get me wrong, the conversion rate is still between 0.1 to 1%, but that means that if you send out 100 emails, you might get a high quality backlink. And when it comes to trust rank, or the idea of trust rank, one high quality backlink can be enough for certain verticals. So again, there's a lot of nuance here. There are a lot of things that we have to clarify and specify, but that's usually how I would go about it, is reverse engineering, see what works, do it better, be very proactive in reaching out, try to find a niche, try to find an advantage, and just going further than your competitors, creating more content, better content, a different content format, and just try to be better at them. One concept that I keep in mind here is that this idea of disruption, and it doesn't always have to be a startup disrupting a big incumbent on the market. It can also just simply be the idea that when a site reaches a certain level of success, there are blind spots that come up. The larger you grow, the more blind spots you have. And as a new entry to market, or as a new site, or a young, brand, I would look for these blind spots. I would look for the things that the site is just too big to care about, and then try to do it better, or try to take away a little bit of market share from them. I know that's a pretty abstract concept, but I'm happy to elaborate if you want to. But otherwise, I think we're good on questions here. So if there is nothing else left, then I want to thank you very much for your attention and for tuning in, and for Serpstat having me. Maria, I don't know if if we should just quit it at this point in time, but I think we're good here.